Look at this map of South America, and you'll see Argentina sitting there with some of the richest land on the entire continent. We're talking about some of the most fertile soil in the world, massive natural resources, and a population that's educated and skilled. So why is it that Argentina, a nation that was once as wealthy as Canada and Switzerland, now struggles with constant economic crises, inflation that destroys people's savings, and a currency that loses value by the month? That's the question we're diving into today. Because Argentina's story isn't about bad luck or bad geography. It's about bad decisions. And understanding what went wrong there could teach us all something valuable about how nations build or destroy their own wealth. Here is what I mean. In 1900, Argentina was genuinely one of the richest nations on earth. The country exported beef, wheat, and grains to feed the world. Buenos Aires was called the Paris of South America. People were moving there from Europe, seeking opportunity, just like they were moving to the United States. Argentina had it all. Fast forward to today, and the story is completely different. The peso has lost over 90% of its value in the last 2 decades. Inflation regularly hits 40, 50, sometimes even 60% per year. People are using US dollars just to store their money because the peso becomes worthless so fast. Poverty has skyrocketed, and the nation that once rivaled the wealthiest countries in the world now finds itself in the same economic category as struggling developing nations. So what happened? How does a country go from that to this? The answer starts with understanding a critical economic mistake that Argentina made over and over again. Starting in the 1930s and continuing for decades, Argentina decided to protect its domestic industries from foreign competition. This is called protectionism, and on the surface, it sounds reasonable. You want to help your own businesses grow, right? You want to keep jobs at home. But here's where it gets interesting. When you protect an industry from competition, you remove the incentive for that industry to innovate and improve.
Think about it this way. If you're a manufacturer in Argentina, and you know that foreign competitors can't undercut your prices because the government has put tariffs on their goods, why would you invest in better technology? Why would you work harder to make a better product? You've already got the market locked up. So what happened was that Argentine industries became inefficient, bloated, and outdated. They were protected, but they weren't competitive. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was innovating and improving. Other countries were building world-class industries. Argentina was building industries that could only survive behind walls of government protection. And this matters because when you can't compete globally, you can't generate the wealth that a modern economy needs. Now let's zoom out across the broader Latin American region to understand how Argentina's neighbors handled things differently. Countries like Chile took a different path. They opened their markets, they embraced trade, and yes, it was painful at first. But over time, their industries became world competitive. They attracted foreign investment. They created genuine wealth. Argentina went the opposite direction, and this protectionist mindset created another massive problem. When you protect domestic industries, you also tend to create corruption and cronyism. Businesses that should have failed got government support anyway. Politicians gave contracts to their friends. Resources flowed to the politically connected instead of to the most efficient producers. And this created a vicious cycle. Bad businesses stayed alive because of government help. Good businesses couldn't compete against subsidized rivals. The overall economy became less productive. And when an economy is less productive, it generates less wealth. If you found this breakdown helpful and you want to understand more about how nations build or destroy their wealth, hit that subscribe button, because we dive deep into these kinds of economic stories every single week. And if you want to see more about the decisions that separate wealthy nations from struggling ones, check out the video we've got queued up for you next. It's going to blow your mind. This is a fundamental truth that Argentina learned the hard way. But wait, there's more. Because protectionism and cronyism led directly to Argentina's next major mistake: printing money. Here is what I mean. When an economy isn't growing because it's inefficient and uncompetitive, governments face a choice. They can make the hard decisions, they can reform the economy, they can cut spending and balance budgets, or they can take the easy way out, they can print money. Argentina chose the easy way out, and they did it over and over and over again, starting in the 1940s and continuing through the decades. Whenever Argentina faced a budget deficit, whenever they needed to pay for government programs, whenever they wanted to stimulate the economy, they printed pesos. And here's what happens when you print money. The money supply increases, but the actual productive capacity of the economy doesn't increase. You've got more money chasing the same amount of goods, so prices go up. That's inflation. And inflation is devastating to ordinary people. If you're earning a salary, your money loses value every single month. If you're trying to save for something, your savings get eaten away by inflation. If you're a business trying to plan for the future, you can't because you don't know what costs will be next year. Inflation destroys long-term thinking. It destroys savings. It destroys investment. And Argentina's inflation got so bad that it became a defining characteristic of the economy. In the 1980s and 90s, Argentina experienced hyperinflation. We're talking about prices doubling in a matter of months. The currency became almost worthless, and this is where it gets important. The government's response was to try to fix inflation by pegging the peso to the US dollar at a 1-to-1 ratio. They said, okay, 1 peso equals $1, and we're going to keep it that way. This is called a currency peg, and on the surface, it seems like a solution. If your currency is locked to a strong currency like the dollar, inflation should stop, right? And it did, for a while. The peg worked, inflation came down, the economy stabilized, people could save money again without watching it disappear. But here's the problem. A currency peg only works if your economy is actually healthy underneath. If you're still running deficits, still printing money, still making bad economic decisions, the peg becomes a trap. And that's exactly what happened. The peg kept inflation low, so people didn't see the underlying problems getting worse. The government kept spending more than it earned. Corruption and inefficiency continued. The economy wasn't becoming more competitive. It was just being masked by the artificial strength of the peso. This is a really important lesson. Sometimes the solution to a problem just hides the problem instead of fixing it. And eventually, the peg broke. In 2001, Argentina couldn't maintain the 1-to-1 ratio anymore. The peso crashed, the economy collapsed, people lost their savings overnight, banks froze accounts, there were riots in the streets. And this is crucial to understand. The crisis didn't happen because of bad luck or external factors. It happened because of years and years of bad decisions. The protectionism, the money printing, the currency peg that masked the problems, the corruption, the inefficiency, all of it led to that moment. Now here is the thing. After the crisis, Argentina did recover somewhat. The peso devalued, which actually made Argentine exports more competitive. Commodity prices were high. The economy grew for a while. But did Argentina learn the lesson? Did they reform their economy? Did they fix the underlying problems? Not really. They went back to many of the same mistakes. They went back to printing money. They went back to deficit spending. They went back to trying to control the economy through government intervention instead of letting markets work. And so here we are today. Argentina is still struggling. The peso is still losing value. Inflation is still destroying people's savings. And the cycle continues. So what's the lesson here? What can we learn from Argentina's mistakes? Well, the first lesson is that you can't protect your way to prosperity. You can't build a wealthy economy by keeping out competition. You have to compete. You have to innovate. You have to be willing to let inefficient businesses fail so that better businesses can grow. The second lesson is that you can't print your way to prosperity either. You can't solve economic problems by printing money. That just creates inflation, which destroys wealth in a different way. The third lesson is that short-term fixes often create long-term problems. The currency peg looked like a solution, but it just delayed the crisis and made it worse when it finally came. And the fourth lesson, maybe the most important one, is that economic decisions matter. The choices that leaders make, the policies that governments implement, they have real consequences for real people. Argentina had all the resources it needed to be one of the wealthiest nations on earth. It had the land, the people, the education, the natural resources. But because of policy mistakes, because of the wrong decisions, it squandered that opportunity. And that's both a warning and a lesson. It's a warning that even nations with tremendous advantages can fail if they make the wrong choices. And it's a lesson that good economics and good policy matter. They matter a lot. Because the difference between Argentina and a truly wealthy nation often comes down to the choices that leaders make. And that's something that every country, every business, every person should think about. Because we all face choices about how to build wealth, how to grow, how to create value. And Argentina's story shows us what happens when we make the wrong choices. It shows us the power of protecting ourselves from competition instead of embracing it. It shows us the danger of printing money instead of earning it. And it shows us that there are no shortcuts to real prosperity. Real wealth comes from hard work, from innovation, from competition, from making good decisions year after year after year. And that's the story of Argentina, a nation that had everything and lost it because it made the wrong choices. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't just about Argentina. This is about understanding how economies work. This is about seeing the patterns that lead to success and the patterns that lead to failure. And if you can understand those patterns, you can apply them to your own life, your own business, your own financial decisions. That's the real power of studying economic history. It's not just about understanding the past. It's about using those lessons to build a better future. So I want to ask you something.
Are there areas in your own life where you're protecting yourself from competition instead of embracing it? Are there places where you're taking shortcuts instead of doing the hard work? Are there ways you could be making better decisions about your money and your future? Think about those questions. Because Argentina's story is a story about choices. And the choices you make today will determine your prosperity tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.